Hey, my name is Gabriel, and I just had a fascinating conversation with July Grullon, the co-founder of NettyWorth. NettyWorth is a platform that allows for NFT lending and credit scoring. And they're building some really cool stuff. They really have a finger on the pulse of the NFT space, as well as different lending protocols. And we just went off and we spoke about everything NFTs, kind of trends. And it's a fascinating, fun conversation. And I definitely recommend watching it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. How are you feeling? You traveled across the world. You were just in Hong Kong, went to Bali, San Francisco, Denver. Now you're here.
Yeah. No, it's been a grind, but I'm super excited. I feel like this year ETH Denver is definitely has a lot of energy, compared to last year. Yeah, I'm just excited, meeting, partners, other founders, investors. So it's been really good.
That's great. I'm actually curious. So how is the energy there? Because I wasn't here last year. So how do you find the energy to be different?
I mean, I think because we were like again in a bearish market, like it was like pretty
Mm,
tough and there was a lot of like uncertainty around like crypto in the US. Obviously the administration changing, Bitcoin going from 17 up to right now hovering around 80 to 90. There's just a lot more excitement in terms of like the future of crypto, and you're seeing that through the events, the attendees. Yeah, so I think it's going pretty well.
that's great. That's great. I mean, I feel like this is an interesting segue into kind of like the space of NFTs. We've kind of like similar. We were having a conversation when we met the first time how NFTs are kind of like underrated right now,
Yes,
and
yes.
so I'm starting to feel like they're coming back. I'm sure you feel that way. So tell us about kind of where NFTs are at, and then guide us into what NettyWorth is doing.
Yeah, so if you look at right, obviously like we saw big hype during like 2021 around NFTs. Then the bear market came around, but what we started seeing this early last year was basically who the blue chips were, right? So we saw obviously Bored Ape, CryptoPunks, coming back and showing their dominance. I believe right now they're hovering around 100 to 130,000 per CryptoPunk. You saw the excitement around Pudgy Penguins, their token launch, Doodles coming in, having partnership with McDonald's, and also teasing the community with a token launch. OpenSea doing that as well. So yeah, like we just saw where like the folks that were building real communities and real brands around these NFT projects, that this was something that was going to stay, right? It's not something that was just a fad that it was just going to go away. For instance, one of the metrics that I like looking at is the lending market. Where 2 years ago the lending market was maybe like a 1.8 billion dollar market cap size for NFT loans, and today we're close to about $5 billion. It's a huge difference there, which is showing that there's more assets and more liquidity that users could access. And this is one of the reasons we created NettyWorth. So we're the AI loan infrastructure that enables dApps to create their own loan marketplaces for digital and real world assets.
Mm.
So we have like borrowing and lending alerts. We have a Web3 credit score system that's called NettyScore that provides lenders with insights with how many times a borrower has defaulted or repaid their loan. So, think of that like we built this incredible marketplace where people could borrow and lend against NFTs, gaming assets, or real world assets, basically anything that's tokenized on that side. We like to say, just like Visa and MasterCard is the infrastructure for payments, NettyWorth will be the infrastructure for loans on the blockchain.
Wow. So you're talking about all loans, or are you talking about specifically NFTs? Go
Yeah. So think of the position we're taking right now is like look at Aave, where they're like the strong dominance when it comes to like borrowing and lending against cryptocurrency.
Mhm.
And what we're focusing on is more like the digital asset side. So think again as like an NFT gaming asset or an RWA that's tokenized. For folks that might not know, that's a real world asset.
Mm.
And basically any real world asset such as like a piece of land, property, jewelry, right? Like watches, handbags, any of these items that are valuable could be tokenized and added to the blockchain. And then people could use that token to basically borrow and lend.
Fascinating. So I know you guys recently came up with the NettyScore system.
Yes.
So tell me about that, and how does AI kind of play into
Yeah. So one of the things that we saw from the space was there were a lot of folks building like Web3 companies, like Web3 credit scoring companies. But what we realized was that there was no utility to it. It was just more like, hey, we could analyze a wallet, but you find the use case for it, right? And in our side, we're like, well, we actually have a product, which is a marketplace for lending. Why don't we bring in a Web3 credit scoring system that will provide data to lenders such as repayment rates? So why this is so important is because today a lender could go to NettyWorth.io and they could actually see how many times a person has taken out a loan, how many times they repaid their loan, and what's the overall repayment rate on there, right? Where all this data is on the blockchain. We're just organizing it, simplifying it, and putting it where it's very clear for a lender to understand and for them to assess if they should lend to a party or not.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That's huge,
Yeah.
honestly.
And then what we do is just to highlight in the traditional Web 2 world, your credit score is based on your social security number. And what we did with NettyWorth is we tied your NettyScore to your wallet. So your wallet is what's creating the history. So let's say if a user is like, hey, I just want to switch my wallets or I want to keep changing my wallets, they're never going to be able to build history. And we think that this data point, as far as repayment history and providing lenders with more insights, more data, eventually is just going to become more and more powerful. So we think the beginning stage right now where it's at, which is a repayment rate, but it's eventually going to evolve into having much more data.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm very curious about the data because, like you mentioned, if someone is able to switch wallets, it's kind of like they can reset their credit score in a way, right?
Yeah.
So how are you guys?
Yeah, so their repayment rate would be zero because they have no history,
okay.
right? So think of it like if really what you want is maybe get a metric of, hey, July took out 10 loans, and out of the last 10 loans, he defaulted on 3 of them, right? So his repayment rate is 70%, right? So that's good data. But if July is just switching, right? If I'm just switching my wallets every day, well, okay, you have one default, you switch your wallet, you have no data.
Right. So, okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I'm just thinking for the people that have, let's say, had 3 defaults, right? And then they switch to 0. 0 is better than 30%, like or 3 defaults.
Yeah.
In a way, they can kind of like boost back up. That's just kind of like what I'm thinking. I'm just wondering if that's something.
Yeah, but 0
it's still not good.
It's still not.
Okay.
It's still not good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like you know how in the traditional world when they're like no credit is bad credit.
Yeah, it's true.
It's almost that. Like you haven't shown anything to say, hey, this person is worthy of credit. Now, I want to highlight that doesn't deter a lender to just to like not lend. Now, the deal could be where it's worth the lender lending no matter if the person defaults, right? Depending on the LTV, right? So if the asset is 100,000 and this person has an 80% default rate, but maybe he just wants a $10,000 loan, most lenders will say, hey, I'm still willing to lend it even with his default rate.
Interesting. So I mean, that's a great. So the interest rate, is it a flexible interest rate? Is it based off of like the repayment history? How does it?
So it's peer to peer. So basically, the way it works is a user will create a loan request. And they could request, hey, I only want to pay 10% APR or maybe 20% APR. But the lender could either counter offer or accept the offer from the borrower. Okay. So it's peer to peer. We're never participating in any of that. So again, we're really just the infrastructure allowing peer to peer system to provide borrowing and lending, on our infrastructure.
Cool. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what allows you guys to like create allow for efficient and secure lending.
Yeah, so everything is done on blockchain with our smart contract. Our smart contract has been audited, I believe, 3 times already.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've processed over 150 loans on there. But yeah, so basically what happens is when a user borrows against their asset, that asset goes to escrow, right? So we're never touching the asset. We're never touching any of the currency or anything like that.
Is that just like a wallet that like, what does escrow look like in this case?
Yeah, so think of it almost like a separate wallet or
Cool.
entity, right? Like
Interesting.
section. And then think of it, there's two ways of doing this. What they could either repay their loan because these are term loans before the due date and they could receive their asset back, or they default,
Mm.
which then automatically transfers the asset to the lender.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so
So
we're never touching the asset.
gotcha. It automatically transfers the asset back to the lender or to the borrower.
Yeah, so if the borrower pays their loan on time, it goes back to them.
Okay, and
If
if
they
not,
default, it goes to the lender, the asset.
okay, to the lender or to the owner? Or
Sorry,
to the borrower, to the
yeah,
borrower.
yeah,
Okay,
yes,
okay,
yeah,
just
yeah,
making sure. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay.
yeah,
So I saw a recent stat right before like earlier today that NFTs was it mindshare or one second, transaction volume is up like what 20% in the
yeah,
last
yeah,
week.
yeah, yeah.
So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
How
no,
are you
yeah.
guys capitalizing on this? Like what's the mind like what's the thought process? Where are you guys at?
Yeah, so one of the things that we continue to do is we're looking at new collections to whitelist because basically there's only a set amount of projects that you're able to borrow and lend. For instance, I would say a lot of other folks that are participating in the borrowing and lending side, they're either only allowing blue chip assets,
Hmm.
and for us, we're going like blue chip mid tier. So we're always constantly assessing: do we bring in a project? For instance, like projects like OG projects like Dead Fellas and World of Women, that it's like under an ETH, we still feel that because of the community and because they're pretty solid, whether they're a quarter of an ETH or half an ETH, we think that people should still be able to borrow and lend there. So the excitement as far as like transactions is it just allows us to reevaluate any new projects that we should allow into our allow list so users could borrow and lend against.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I mean, I'm curious, are you guys employing any like educational tactics or resources to kind of onboard more people as, NFTs continue to grow?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we created part of our docs. We break down like every section, like how to borrow, how to lend, how to claim your asset,
Nice.
right? Everything step by step. But we are working on like potentially adding an AI chat where users could ask it questions to understand gas fees, to understand, due dates and LTVs, any type of terminology in
Right.
there where they could ask the chat there. So we are working on that. Also, much more content. So like videos, going above and beyond just like editorial on that side.
Fascinating. That's great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
super important, and I'm happy to hear that you guys are doing that. That's great.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear about any cool user experiences or user stories that you heard about people using your platform.
Yeah.
Any interesting stories?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think one of the cool things is, one investor asks is, hey, when users are borrowing against their asset, a lot of times people are like, who would do that? Right? Like who would just borrow against their asset if they have money or anything? And a lot of times they're borrowing against because they either want to enter into a new position. So in this scenario, let's say someone had a CryptoPunk, it's worth 130. They want to borrow 50, 60,000 and they want to get into maybe Trump coin, right? Like super early, right? This is a great way for them not to sell their current positions to get new liquidity
Mhm.
into something and then almost kind of trade it. The average loan is about 30 to 45 days. So that was something that we learned that like most users are taking short-term loans on these assets. But I think the bigger thing is learning that um, a lot of these folks, they have liquidity, like meaning they have capital tied in other places. So it's not like they're like, oh, I have this NFT and I don't have any capital, right? I don't have any money. I don't have, right? And then that's not the case. So for us is we're realizing that people really just want to unlock crypto to either get into new buying opportunities or new NFT collections that are coming out, or even doing things in, taking a loan and using the USDC to, convert it to, the dollar.
Interesting.
On that side, yeah.
So you mentioned 30 to 45 days. What's the average loan size and what's the average loan interest rate?
Okay, so the average loan size is, I would say, roughly around 20,000.
Okay.
Right, so it's much higher than what people think. I'll add another data point there. The average default rate is like 8%.
Oh wow.
Which is shocking. Most people think is like 20 or 30%, because again, most people don't want to lose their asset because it's the LTV, the loan to value, typically is under what the asset is worth. That's on that side. So you said, and the average interest is around 15 to 25%.
Okay.
For the month.
For the month.
For the month, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty high.
It's pretty high, but I mean, there's some incredible stories that happen even outside of our platform. But when Bored Ape was releasing Ape coins, I believe there was a Twitter thread where like someone leveraged like 8 or 10 Bored Apes and bought a ton of ape coin, and then like sold it at the top, paid off his loan in like 3 days.
I remember that.
And like it was like a crazy win. Like the interest he paid of like 14% or 15%, it was nothing compared to what he drew in, which again shows like a use case of what happens if you have a bunch of liquidity and you see a huge buying opportunity that's there. I do believe that as the market matures, because this is peer-to-peer, rates are going to be lower because there's more people competing to provide loans. And you don't want institutions coming in right away, because then that, in one way it's like, oh, we don't want that because we want it for crypto where everyone's making money. But the truth is, the longer this becomes established and the more users that are participating in it, these peer-to-peer loans are going to be more efficient. They're going to be faster, and these loan terms are going to be more favorable.
Amazing. Yeah, I was about to ask you like what do you see the future of NFT lending being? I feel like you just answered that.
Yeah.
Anything else that you think?
I
see in the future.
Yeah, I think gaming assets, there's going to be an explosion there. So the fastest growing segment in crypto is gaming.
In the world, right?
Yeah, in the world. Yeah, in the world, right? So, I mean, this is bigger than DeFi. This is bigger than NFT projects. This is, and, if you just look at what has been happening, for the first time, a user is able to own his armor, his land, his vehicle, his character. And these things are there's gonna be value here, and this value is gonna allow users to basically access liquidity from there. I think the gaming side of things, I think people are highly underestimating this. And I'm saying this, obviously, like I'm not a gamer, right? So I'm not like shilling on the gaming side. But I think there's gonna be a huge opportunity there also with real world assets. So again, I know everyone ties NFTs to like Bored Ape or like a monkey picture or something,
right.
But an NFT is just a non-fungible token, which means it could be, that token could be a gaming token, it could be a Bored Ape token, or it could be an RWA, right? Or real world asset. So I think the gaming side and RWAs, I just think that there's enormous potential there. We could be 2-3 years out, but I think there's definitely something that's coming there.
Fascinating. So how can people get involved and really take advantage? It seems like we're still early,
Yeah, yeah,
right? We're
yeah, yeah.
pretty early. So what would you recommend to people to get involved and kind of capitalize on being early?
Yeah, yeah. So I think of it like this, right? So today, what DeFi does is decentralized finance, and a platform like NettyWorth allows anyone to become a lender, which is super powerful. That means anyone around the world could become a bank, and you could lend against these crypto assets that are providing incredible yield and returns. One of the main things I would say is visit NettyWorth.io, and you're going to get borrowing and lending alerts. So we're going to know basically what assets you own that you could borrow against. Or if you don't own a bunch of NFTs, but you're holding ETH, we're gonna provide you with lending opportunities where you're gonna say, it's gonna say, hey, July, here's a lending opportunity to earn, $2,000, $3,000. So we kind of like do this math for you where it's very simple, where you're like, hey, yeah, I'll park $5,000 on this asset that's only 20 or 30% LTV, which is pretty safe because NFTs are still volatile. And I could earn some yield from this, right? Because it's like the traditional world. Your money in a savings account is dead, right? Crypto obviously fluctuates, but also having just ETH sitting, if you look at ETH, I think it's back down to like 23,
Yeah,
2400.
today.
So we saw the cycle of like $2,000 to 3,500, back
Yeah.
down to 25. But during that whole time, you could have just been earning more ETH,
Right.
right? So the game is not. I know everyone's looking at the price, but I think is about accumulation, right? So it's not how much Bitcoin is; it's how many Bitcoins you own, right? Like
Right.
to a certain point, right?
Right. Right.
On there, and I think that's what it is, right? So if you could lend and earn additional income anywhere around the world, and you could come to NettyWorth.io and do that, or use any of our partners who will be launching their own loan marketplaces. I think that's incredible. It's going to help, you know, just anyone unlock more capital.
Amazing. You're getting me super hyped, man.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess to close off, what are there some services as NFTs continue to grow and as you guys continue to grow? What are some other services that you guys see yourselves adding? Yeah,
Providing,
providing.
yeah. Something that like, we think the future could be where people are borrowing and lending against meme coins.
Okay.
There is a potential of also us participating in that Aave space where
Okay.
people could borrow and lend against traditional crypto. But I think as of right now, we're like, hey, look, there's still an enormous, you know, market that we could go after here, and gaming hasn't really, it's starting to brew and RWAs. But I think of that. I think if you're looking into the future, I think we could definitely do some things with meme coins, because meme coins, as you know, they start off as memes, but some of these, more like blue chip memes,
Right.
eventually are going to start having, uh, infrastructure being built around them, right? Use cases. And so they're not really memes anymore,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
On that case, like we could even say Bitcoin was a meme,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
On that side. So yeah, I think the future is that there'll be more types of assets that users could borrow and lend. Our goal is to expand that, but we want to be very like conscious of not just doing loans for like $100,000 assets, $1 million assets, where even microloans people are participating, where someone in El Salvador could do a loan or lend $200 worth of their crypto to earn more. So I think that's the range that we want to cover, from that micro loan to that top loan.
Where can people find you and how can people start getting involved?
Yeah, so you can find me on X, July, JULY GRULLON underscore. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram. And what was the other one that you said?
And how can people get involved with NettyWorth?
Yeah, just visit nettyworth.io, and yeah, you'll be getting borrowing and lending alerts.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's have a great night.
Thank you.
Brought to you by Hedera and Foresight Ventures. Hey, what's up?
This is
But it's not something Genzio is afraid of.
If you want to survive, you got to build a
How
hive.
many know we do not understand that we do not
Ladies and gentlemen,
We're back at the Genzio Media House.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today.